But stop giving books on love cures and love communication and finding love and fixing love. That ship has sailed. When a person has to manage a relationship with someone who has no empathy and is mean and manipulative, there is no book that's going to fix the relationship because it can't be fixed. This is a new series we're going to be doing, and it's on how to be a supporter to somebody going through narcissistic abuse. Most of you start watching this channel because you're going through it. But over time, my hope is that as you're healing and recovering, you start saying, it ain't me anymore. It's my sister. It's my friend. It's my coworker. It's someone else I know. So in this new series on how to be a supporter, we're going to take on how to do that. Being a supporter to someone going through narcissistic abuse can be really difficult because you often feel so helpless. So again, welcome to this new series. This series is meant to serve sort of two purposes: to give everyone watching tips on how to be there for someone who's going through narcissistic abuse in a way that's good for them and doesn't make things worse for them. But a second hope that I have for this series is for people who are going through narcissistic abuse to recognize what makes a good supporter, what they need around them. What does a person need around them, or what do you need around you to recover, and to get validations for the things that you do need and steering clear of the things that don't work. Now, many people will reach out to me, and we get lots of emails like this. How do I support my sibling? How do I support my friend, my family member, a coworker who's going through a narcissistic relationship? So many people just feel helpless and say, I don't know what to do. Supporting someone going through narcissistic abuse is not easy because it can really bring up a sense of powerlessness and helplessness for everyone involved. The narcissist will not change. The person in the relationship may be trauma bonded and just keep repeating the same cycles. And so as a friend or supporter, you may be tired of hearing the same stories over and over again. I recognize that they can be frustrating. And no matter how you try to fix it, it doesn't get better. Some people get burned out on being supporters, and we're going to cover that in this series. Some people want to fix everything. Some people make the mistake of minimizing or gaslighting. My hope is that in this series, I'll be able to highlight what to do if you are a supporter, what not to do, and for survivors, some lessons on how to take care of yourself and even learn from this for yourself. For survivors, my hope is to validate that sense that someone trying to fix an unfixable mess can feel frustrating, and to spot the gaslighting, maybe not always intended, that people who are meant to support you are putting you through. That still doesn't make it okay. And also to help you, because you understand what makes supporting survivors of narcissistic abuse difficult if you yourself are going through narcissistic abuse. So in today's episode, let's start with a mistake that many people make when they're trying to support or help someone that's getting out of a narcissistically abusive situation. They make the mistake and they say, just put it past you. I'd love for you to drop in the comments if anyone said that to you and how it felt. Let us know. Now, narcissistically abusive relationships end for a number of reasons and in a number of ways: divorce, a breakup, quit a job, cut off from the family, go no contact, death. But we have to be clear that a relationship ending on paper, as it were, just ending, doesn't mean that the demons of that relationship don't continue to run around in your mind. In fact, rumination is one of the most difficult aspects in terms of recovering from narcissistic abuse. Even when the person is no longer in your space, your daily life, that daily tape that plays in your head over and over again can really leave you physically feeling stuck. If you have gone through narcissistic abuse and you are a ruminator, it can be quite normal to want to talk about it. And you are likely to turn to your supporters because they feel safe. You may be on the cusp of getting out and wanting to talk about the many parts of the relationship that bring you down. You may have just left, or you may have been out of this relationship for years. Rumination is tough, but the hope is that by talking things out, that over time, you may be able to release it or problem solve it. But keep in mind, this takes a long time. If you are a supporter listening to this rumination, it can be very tempting to look at the survivors and say, you're out, just let it go. You no longer live together, just put it in the past. God, your father's dead, just put it down, let it go. You're getting a divorce, it's done, just let it go. You're no longer in that job, put it behind you. It's tempting to say these things. Don't do it. Narcissistic abuse behaves like trauma. It is like tentacles that get ensnared in the soul. It changes your emotional and cognitive experience of the world. It undercuts your sense of self. It robs you of potential. It exhausts you and depletes you. And like trauma, just because the stimulus, the traumatic stimulus, is no longer present, it doesn't mean that the experience fades with it. A military veteran home from combat may carry those wounds for years, even if there's no longer a war happening around them. The same with an assault survivor or a survivor of a horrible natural disaster. These traumas and agonies get stuck in our brains. And just because someone is no longer in a relationship doesn't mean it is so easy to just put it behind them. It can be dangerously simple to believe that, oh, they don't have to deal with the day-to-day of this anymore. Why are they still talking about it? Because they have to attempt to release it, because it is still there, those thoughts, confusing them, impacting them. Spending time with a survivor of narcissistic abuse is not always easy. It can be difficult to hear about the unchanging helplessness of their situation and to witness what has been done to them. Over time, many people do put it behind them, but it takes time, sometimes a very long time. So when someone is sharing with you the real experience of what this narcissistically abusive situation was, it's important to not rush their healing or invalidate their experience by simply saying, put it behind you. It's not that easy. This next part I'm going to say will sound pessimistic, but it's not meant to be. I'm just trying to be realistic. You know, it's Dr. RAMANI, right? The pessimist. I am not convinced that any survivor ever completely puts it down completely. The perma-echoes of narcissistic abuse may be things like lifelong self-doubt, a discomfort with conflict, fear of letting other people down, a sense of not being enough. The list is endless. And I've been talking with survivors who 20 to 30 years after they've been out of these relationships, but can still, in excruciating detail, describe how the narcissistic person in their lives left them confused and cowering. And they can still see how those experiences shape them to this very day. As a supporter of someone who has been through narcissistic abuse, you may truly love them and want to be there for them in every way and be so happy when they actually get out of the situation. You may simply want them quickly to throw themselves into a new life and put the toxicity of the narcissistic situation behind them. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. There is no way to zap away the difficult memories. You may think, yeah, they're out. Now we can talk about different stuff, finally, and do different stuff and stop talking about the narcissist. That'll happen with time. But as part of getting better, remember that whoever you're supporting has to walk before they can run. If you want to support someone who is going through narcissistic abuse and may have gotten out of the situation, don't ask them to do the impossible and just put it all behind them. Understand that what lies ahead of them is a difficult process of shedding. As we drive away from a destination, it takes a minute for all of it to fall out of our rearview mirror. So in order to be a supporter, sometimes I know you're excited and you want to get someone to their new life, but you need to be there as they put down the old one. And it takes a minute. And it's not going to happen on anyone's schedules. So let's think about the 7 ways to be a supporter of someone experiencing narcissistic abuse. This is a question that has come in from many people. They themselves aren't the ones going through narcissistic abuse or it's been resolved for them, but someone close to them is, and they want to know how to be there for them because they feel like they're not getting it right. As I walk you through this, I'm going to break this down to cover intimate relationships, family relationships, and work relationships when those distinctions matter. The guidance in this space tends to be pretty universal, but there may be tweaks depending on the nature of the relationship the person is experiencing the narcissistic abuse in. People going through narcissistic abuse struggle with confusion and doubting themselves, all the things we've already talked about. The last thing you want to do is contribute to that confusion just when you're trying to be a supporter. So the first thing to do is listen and simply offer empathy. A person experiencing narcissistic abuse is often lacking both of those things in their lives. Just listen to them with empathy. Ask them how they are feeling. Share your concern if things in their lives they're not doing as well as usual. But do not interrupt them. Let them talk. And when there's a pause, only then should you reflect back what you're hearing. This guidance applies whether this is their narcissistic spouse, their parent, their sibling, their boss, whatever their narcissistically abusive relationship is. Narcissistic abuse is so in your face and at times almost unbelievable that there is a risk of gaslighting someone who's experiencing it. And I'll be talking about more about that in a moment. Listen to them. And empathize, because even if you have not been through narcissistic abuse, odds are you know that it hurts, at a minimum, to be lied to be dismissed, and to be devalued. Number 2, do not call the person in their life out as a narcissist, especially if they're in the early days of sharing their experiences with you. It can be really tempting, especially if you are woke to these narcissistic patterns, but that may be more than they can hear right now. And it may lead them to actually retreat from talking to you even more, or even feel disloyal. It is far better for you to stay focused on the patterns they are sharing, saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Gosh, that sounds like they're invalidating you. Are you okay?" If you name the behavior rather than smack a label on the person who's abusing them, it may allow the conversation to continue to proceed. This rule applies whether you're talking about a parent, a partner, or a colleague. And also, another way to support someone when it is clear as day to you that their partner, parent, anyone in their life is a narcissist and the relationship is taking a toll on them, step back and just say, "Hey, I'm reaching out and wanted to check in and see if you are okay." It may just be that you've noticed that they're distracted or sad or just don't seem like themselves. Many times they will likely just push it off and say, I'm fine, but it's still worth a shot. Another entry point to being a supporter is if you recently observed an interaction between your friend and their narcissist. Instead of saying, "Ugh, what a jerk narcissist fool you're married to, how do you put up with it?" And they, after you say that, may actually defend the narcissist. The better approach is to say, "Hey, are you okay? I just saw what happened there. I just wanted to check in." You have no idea how healing it is for a person who is going through narcissistic abuse to know that someone is bearing witness. And even if your friend or your sister or whoever it is isn't ready to acknowledge it or do anything about it, just feeling heard can be validating. Number 3, don't criticize them for using the term narcissist. So many people I know who were sharing their story of narcissistic abuse had already read thousands of pages, lots of books, and listened or watched hundreds of hours of content. Here's the deal. The term narcissist is not a diagnostic term. It's a description. So please don't get self-righteous on them and call them out for using that term. You are not the semantics police. Your friend is likely enduring some tough emotional abuse. If they use the word, understand what the word really means and what they are enduring. And if you're watching this channel, you probably already know what it means. Number 4, don't try to fix their issue. I do this for a living and I can't fix this for people. Do not give them bad advice like say, well, maybe you guys just need to work on your communication. Or maybe you're just going through a bump in the road. Or give them a couples therapist referral who may not understand narcissistic abuse. Don't offer to talk to their partner or their parent or their sibling for them. If the person you are listening to, your friend, is indeed experiencing narcissistic abuse, you sure as hell aren't going to be the one to change the narcissist in their life. And in fact, you talking to the narcissist in their life could make things far worse for the person you are trying to support, because it may activate the shame and rage spiral of that narcissist in their life. Listen. While I would be flattered and honored if you wanted to pass on my content and books initially, that is not the right move. Just listen to them. Hear them. Many times we feel helpless if we just can't fix something, if we can't just do something. Sometimes just having a safe sounding board is nothing short of a miracle for someone enduring narcissistic abuse. You don't need to go in there and be a fixer. Just listen. If down the line they ask for more pointed information, then you can offer them what you believe would be useful. But don't pull that out early or unsolicited. Or ask first before you start overwhelming them with content recommendations. You may also just say, and please don't do this, oh, this is too much. I can't listen to this. You need to go to therapy. Here's a name. Nah. Being a supporter, being a friend means being present with your person's pain. Don't just try to make it go away by telling them to talk to a therapist. It's good for them to do that, but that shouldn't be the first thing you say. None of this is comfortable to talk about or listen to. Being a human being and being a supporter isn't always easy. Number 5, don't criticize or shame the person you are supporting. This is particularly important when it is a family relationship. The overriding adherence to family sticking together or family loyalty can lead people to tell people that they shouldn't call out their family members, or that at least your parents were there for you and fed you. I don't know why all of a sudden feeding a child is like a get out of jail for a parent. There are a million subtle ways this can play out. Perhaps if you are single and don't want to be, and a friend who is enduring a narcissistic relationship shares his or her story, don't slip and say, well, at least you're in a relationship. That is very invalidating, and trust you me, you would rather be single forever than to be in a narcissistic relationship. You don't want to slip into tired old guidance such as, well, relationships are supposed to be hard, so you have to work at it. Your poor friend may be working themselves to the point of exhaustion, if they haven't already, to make it work. Do not shame or criticize someone in a relationship like this. Trust me, they have already done this to themselves many times over. Number 6, do not gaslight the person you're trying to support. You may not mean to do this, but never say things like, is it really that bad? Or, I know your mother and she's always been a bit edgy, but she's your mom. Or, I love your mom. I've always enjoyed getting to know your mom. Or, everyone knows working for your CEO isn't easy, but he always gets the job done. Or saying something like, Maybe you're being too sensitive. He just says what he wants with no filter. That's just him. Do not say anything remotely gaslighty. This person who is enduring narcissistic abuse has been so gaslighted that, trust me, they are doing it to themselves at this point. Do not be one more person who piles on the confusion. Hear them and hold a safe space of reality for them. Number 7, ask them how you can help. It's a simple offer. After you listen to them, without interrupting, ask them, is there a way I can help? How can I help? They may say there's nothing you can do, just listening is enough, and then believe them. You have to accept that answer. Do not get it into your head that actually they meant that they want me to do more. That may be your need to be a fixer. It may not be what they need. If they do make a more pointed request, such as, can you guide me to any resources? Or do you know a good therapist? Or can I just stay at your house for a few nights or leave a bag there? Whatever, then step up if you're able to. But just give them the space and the respect to ask. After years of being in a narcissistic relationship in which their needs were not heard, make sure you respect them enough that you do hold space for that to happen. And when they say right now they don't need anything, then they don't need anything. It can be heartbreaking and frustrating to support someone going through narcissistic abuse. Be mindful. Think before you speak. Be kind. And don't let your fears and discomfort get in the way of simply being there for them. And another important thing for you to do is, if indeed you're trying to be a supporter and you are there for them a lot, you get educated yourself. Listen, if you're on this channel, you've probably been watching other videos on narcissism. I have lots of videos on this. I have books on it. There's lots of stuff out there. Learn it. So that way, when you hear your friend, you can hear it with a wise ear, so the two of you aren't attempting to build the airplane in the sky. I hope this gives you some guidance for taking on what can often be a really heartbreaking space of being a supporter for someone you care about who's going through narcissistic abuse. Again, these stories can be so harrowing that you almost can't believe it's happening. You may not want to believe it, but believe it you need to, because that's what your friend, what your person, the person you're supporting needs you to do, to never doubt their reality and to be present and bear witness. So we're going to talk today, though, about how to be a supporter in a very specific situation. So when you're supporting someone going through narcissistic abuse, it's confusing, it's frustrating, it's also heartbreaking. But we're going to talk about a specific situation today. What if the person that you are supporting or trying to support through narcissistic abuse is actually in denial about their situation? Now, being a supporter to someone going through narcissistic abuse can feel like a slow burn. You always want to fix what's happening to them. And we've already covered that. You don't try to fix it because it's not going to work. And if anything, all you want, you just wish they could see it. And it can be really, really hard if you see it and they don't. So let's think of it. Let's think of a scenario. Let me present a scenario to you. You have a friend who is in a narcissistically abusive relationship. You'll be out to dinner with a friend and their partner, and they're being gaslighted right in front of you. You'll witness them being invalidated. And then at some point in the meal, you go to the restroom. And on the way back from the restroom, you have this sort of awful experience of watching your friend's narcissistic partner doing what appeared to be like getting someone's number at the bar. You may want to tell your friend. You may want to even just at least tell them elements of what you saw. And so you do. And your friend doesn't want to hear it, or they make excuses or justify it, or even tell you that you're making something up or making a big deal about it because of your own stuff, maybe your own history with narcissistic abuse. So how are you supposed to support someone who's going through narcissistic abuse, but they're really, really living in denial? Now, this is a tough one, and yet it's a situation that comes up. And there's certainly a range of responses here. Some people may find that they just can't do it. They'll say it is way too hard to sit here and witness this happening and watch them being treated so badly. So you fold, you're like, I'm out. You may no longer be willing to spend time with them, maybe, for example, as a couple. Or maybe you'll only say, I'll spend time with you alone, but not when that other person's around. And it may be hard, even that, spending time with them alone may be hard because they're in so much denial about their relationship. Some people will just go in like gangbusters and say, I don't like your partner. You're in a relationship with a narcissist. I absolutely think you are too good for this person. I can't let this happen to you. You deserve better. Here's my cell phone. Break up with them now. So there are obviously a whole range of ways people express themselves when your friend's in denial. And this may apply how to support someone when they're in denial, even if it's not an intimate relationship. It may be that you witness a friend being narcissistically abused by a parent, by their adult child, by a boss or a coworker, or by another friend. And your friend or your loved one is in denial. They'll say things like, oh, come on now, they aren't that bad, or don't talk like that about my child, or they're just who they are. They aren't mistreating me, and on, when it's so clear that the person is being really, really mistreated by this other person. Now, some people will try to gently turn the friend's head subtly. Instead of calling it out or distancing from the narcissistically abused friend, they may do subtle stuff like asking, hey, are you okay? Or I just saw what happened. Is everything all right? Now, a person in denial may still deny that anything is wrong. Now, this approach, though, what I'm suggesting here may be the best one, just to try to be subtle. Another approach may be to say, hey, just checking in on you. I'm a little worried about you, about what I've been seeing. Doesn't feel right, but I wanted to make sure you're okay. It's denial, folks. Your friend or loved one may still give you denial type responses. Hey, yeah, everything's fine. We're good. You just saw us on a bad day. But when someone is in denial about narcissistic abuse, you aren't going to change them in one day. When you subtly try to point it out, you're planting a seed. You don't really know what is going on in their head. They have their own obvious cognitive dissonance they're struggling with. They have their own trauma bonds, their own fears, and they may not ready to be frank and share about it. So denial is a safe harbor, a defense. But perhaps by just checking in, you are actually validating something that they're not yet honest about, even with themselves. Now, some folks may say, listen, I can't do it. I can't be with someone in denial. I have been through narcissistic abuse myself, and I cannot just sit there and watch it. It is too triggering. It is too upsetting. People will be thinking to themselves, listen, I have come too far now to have to sit in the audience and watch someone I care about have to deal with narcissistic abuse. And listen, folks, I get it. And honestly, I can also get behind that. I get it. If you're in the midst of managing your own healing, your own survivorship, you need to do you first. It can be anguishing to watch someone you care about going through the cycle of narcissistic abuse over and over again, whether you have been through it or not. Now, ironically, while I spend many, many hours every single week talking with people about narcissistic abuse clinically and personally, when it's people I'm close to, I find it almost intolerable to be in the presence of it, especially when a person is in denial. Now, I tend to take another tack with folks. I don't even talk to, especially people I care about, I don't talk to them about their narcissistic relationship. Instead, I choose to focus on that friend or that loved one's gifts. Talk to them about their resilience, notice special things about them, asking them about the things they're doing. I know they're not hearing any of that from their partner or their family. So I also know I'm not going to break through their denial. But I guess my secret wish is that by having someone hear that they are quite extraordinary, that I'm contributing to a place inside of them that is slowly getting stronger. And maybe someday down the road, they may see it. Maybe they won't, but there is never any harm in telling someone that they are good and cherished and have special and unique gifts, instead of trying to do the impossible task of cracking their denial before they're willing to give in. and just said it's better off to simply work on them getting stronger. It's so painful when someone is in denial and continuing to endure narcissistic abuse right in front of you, especially if you are starting to see it take a toll on them. They speak badly about themselves, or they gaslight themselves, or they just become more isolated. None of us are likely to be the wake up call for someone else, not you, not even me as a therapist. I have worked with clients where it was so clear that narcissistic abuse was happening. There was everything short of sort of a neon sign saying narcissistically abused and an arrow, but the clients just simply, they didn't want to hear about it. And they would often drop out of therapy when they recognized that this person wasn't going to change. And in a sense, they could see that I saw it. And they didn't want to do it anymore. The most frustrating part of being a supporter, especially when you're a survivor yourself, is to watch someone go through what you went through or some version of it. And then if that person is in denial, it can sometimes take you back and fill you with feelings of helplessness, powerlessness, hopelessness. And if you're a survivor, think back to that time. There was a time when you weren't ready to hear it, but kind words from a friend or someone who cared about you still held a lot of weight and would feel very, very precious. If you need to step away from someone in denial who's going through narcissistic abuse, I get it. If you can try to not change it, but just be present with it, you may just strengthen the person without having to point out the problems in the relationship. But denial, in fact, is a part of the narcissistic abuse experience. Some people just get caught in that space of denial a lot longer than others. I'm asking you to do one thing. The one question I want you to stop asking. None of us should be asking this. It's a question that so many people ask survivors of narcissistic relationships. You ready for that question you're never supposed to ask? Why did you stay so long? Oh, don't ask people that. If any of you watching this have survived a narcissistic relationship, and usually this question comes up when people stayed in intimate relationships, this question almost inevitably comes up. And if you didn't get people asking you this one, then maybe you'd have gotten the equally bad question of, well, it wasn't that bad, was it? Now, people in the domestic violence world have grappled with people asking questions like this of survivors for years. And the reframe they offer, which is very wise, is why do we keep asking the survivors why they stay? And instead, we should be asking the abusers why they abuse. But yet, when we ask this question, why did you stay so long? In a basic way, we're kind of blaming the survivor for this relationship. If they saw the red flags, they should have left, right? So if they didn't leave, then there must be something wrong with them. Or, God forbid, people think maybe they wanted the abuse. It's enraging to me when this is said, and it's absolutely ridiculous. One of the hardest things for survivors of narcissistically abusive relationships is how many people around them enable this unhealthy relationship. They turn a blind eye, they choose not to see it, or they soft pedal it, or even perhaps even defend it. You hear all the usual BS like, all relationships are hard, or maybe they didn't mean it that way, or, oh, he had a tough start in life. Just be nice to him. Maybe they're just stressed. It's work. You know the drill. You've heard all of this. Now, the interesting thing is that the wake-up call sometimes happens when other people end up on the receiving end of that narcissistic person's toxicity. I actually really am offended when a person is a raging narcissist out there and other people will say, well, they were perfectly nice to me. What the hell does that even mean? Someone else is suffering at the hands of the voice of this terrible person. So maybe we do need to take a more critical look at this person and their behavior. But it's like a mosquito. We're all going to get bit. Sit outside long enough on a summer night and you're going to get stung. The same thing applies for narcissistic people. At some point, if you hang out with one long enough, you will experience their sting. So then, After people around you may see the narcissist's rage or bad behavior, they may be more likely to say, "Yikes, that was a really rotten person. Why did you stay so long?" Now, sometimes when people ask this question, "Why did you stay so long?" it's not ill-intentioned. It's merely someone sometimes trying to understand something. Maybe they genuinely want to know what the competing issues were. Did you stay for reasons of children or money or religion? However, first of all, it's none of their damn business. But it's never a good question because it puts the survivor on the spot. And it is also shaming. The undercurrent of this question is often, "Why didn't you leave sooner? What are you, dumb? Were you a codependent? Did you just not see it?" That kind of questioning can activate the shame that most survivors experience throughout the relationship and leave them feeling even more foolish and more self-blaming. There is nothing good that comes out of this question of "Why did you stay so long?" So you may be wondering, I'm close to someone who is going through narcissistic abuse or a really difficult relationship. What should I ask someone instead? What do I ask someone who is leaving a difficult relationship? Maybe you ask or you say, "Do you want to talk about it? Are you okay? How are you feeling?" Questions that show concern and empathy, not all the blamey, shamey stuff. If you get deeper in the conversation, then it might even be better to ask things like, "It sounds like it was so difficult and so confusing. I can understand why you felt so stuck." Empathy is the one gift in the world that fits every time. We already know why people stay: fear, confusion, guilt, lack of information, lack of knowledge, children, money, religion, culture, hope, resignation. It's understandable. I know people who were given bad guidance and they were told to work on communication in their relationship, and they got stuck in one of these relationships for another 10 years. Even when people are taught about radical acceptance and realistic expectations and how narcissism works and why it doesn't change, some people still stay. But they may stay with their eyes wider open and their minds more wise. Asking someone, "Why did you stay so long?" is intrusive. And if you are a survivor, you may be wondering, what can you do under these circumstances if you are hit with this question? I always tell my clients, you don't owe anyone a damned answer to this question. Many survivors out there are incredibly nice, empathic people, and they don't want to be rude. They may respond with things like, "It's a long, complex story, and that's too simple a question." Or simply, they could answer, "It's just more than I want to get into right now." Those who knew you will know why, and they will support you. Those who don't get it will never get it. Narcissistic abuse appears to be one of those things you don't really get until you actually go through it. People feel entitled to breakup stories, to hear about people's breakups. Who knows, maybe it makes them feel better about their own lives. Maybe it's genuine curiosity, gossipy curiosity, or your life being sort of their movie of the week to watch. Maybe it is just that simple desire for gossip. But when it comes to narcissistic abuse, most people don't understand it. Many people judge it. And survivors have already been through enough without having to regurgitate their stories for potentially judgmental audiences. None of us are entitled to look behind the curtains of anyone's soul. Just don't ask anyone this question. And if you're ever the one who's on the receiving side of it, don't feel that you owe anyone an explanation. So there you go. I rarely get to say never in life. Never ask anyone, "Why did you stay so long?" At some point, if you give them time, space, and safety, you'll probably start to understand it. And also, never gaslight someone telling you about this. If they're telling you, then please listen to them. Don't question them, and never, never say, "It really couldn't have been that bad." Trust you me, I've heard thousands of these stories at this point. Yes, it really was that bad. So let's talk about a big mistake a lot of people make when they're trying to help people going through narcissistic abuse. They try to fix it. Now, being a supporter to someone in a narcissistic relationship can be difficult because it feels unfixable. And in a way, it is. The narcissistic person is not going to change. And as long as the person you care about is in the relationship, it can feel very hopeless and helpless for everyone who's involved. Now, human nature is such that when we see something that is not working, especially when it's involving someone we care about, we want to fix it. And this is really pronounced when we, again, care about someone and we want their pain to go away. For many supporters of those going through narcissistic abuse, that tends to manifest as wanting to fix it in any number of ways. One group of fixers may actually believe that you can fix the relationship. Couples therapy, date nights, offering them books or websites. Don't do it. There's nothing that's going to fix the relationship, not even a seasoned therapist. And it will invalidate the person you are trying to support, who may likely have tried all of it and then some. If it's a family situation, the same deal. Don't start handing them books on family estrangement or forgiveness, or tell them that all families go through hard times and maybe they can talk to a therapist. Do not try to fix it. By the time many people really start to share about what's happening in their narcissistic relationship, they have already tried more things than you can imagine to fix it themselves. In addition, they've also blamed themselves, they have gaslighted themselves and second-guessed themselves, and generally driven themselves mad. So whatever fix it is that you may be offering, I hate to say it, that invalidates them more. So please don't do it. When we are helpless, we want to fix stuff, right? It's why we cook casseroles and cookies for people who are experiencing grief, or try to do something to make things better. When people are going through narcissistic abuse, as hard as it may be, one of the best things we can do is just sit with them in the helplessness. But it's hard to not try to fix it, but to just listen and empathize at how impossible it must feel and how hard it must be. So here are some other fix-it people. Here are some other fix-it mistakes people may make. When you are supporting someone who has recently gotten out of a narcissistic relationship, and by recent, I typically mean within the last year, please don't push dating. As part of recovery and healing, the Dr. RAMANI rule is often, I believe, a minimum of 12 months without a new intimate or romantic relationship is essential. This is a time period where you get to know yourself again and heal from the relationship. You may think that the answer to your friend or your loved one's narcissistic abuse broken heart is new love. Absolutely not. Friendship, distraction, checking in, all of those are great things. But we want people to be able to get their legs under them again, to release and to learn and to get out of the haze that the post-narcissistic abuse period looks like. I have had to walk so many clients through the years who 2 to 3 months out of a very narcissistic divorce, their friends are already excitedly talking to them about dating. And I sternly look at them in session and say, no, no, and hell no. And I tell them they can make me their fall gal for their unwillingness to date. I know therapists aren't supposed to tell people what to do, but on this one, I don't budge. Because too often when you're still healing, there's a real risk of missing red flags. Now, when it is a family issue, especially if you are part of the family system, you may want to fix it by doing something like an intervention. Absolutely not. Many families don't like the discomfort and inconvenience of family tension, or maybe a disruption to family traditions, or may just not like thinking that this is a narcissistic family system. You may do things like, you might say things like, oh, maybe we should all sit in a room and finally break the no contact. And maybe you should talk to mom or dad or grandparent or sister so you don't regret it one day, and then you trot them into the room. Don't do it. The person you are trying to support has already thought about the regret part about 1,000 times. You're trying to fix all of this only makes the process more difficult. Trying to force something or leaving someone you are close to doubting their own boundaries, it doesn't work, and it does not support them. Listen to them. Empathize with them. Recognize that it's hard, but don't try to fix it. It's the same thing at work, the same in a relationship. I think too many people are watching reality shows that feature big dramatic interventions, and they pretend that these interventions work. When it comes to narcissism, that kind of big grandiose attempt to fix things is really the least supportive thing you can do. It fixes nothing and actually could put the person you're trying to support in even more psychological abuse. Nobody likes a lost cause. We don't like the idea that something, especially a person or a relationship or a family situation, cannot be fixed. But sometimes they cannot be fixed. Wisdom is knowing when to walk away and save yourself. To be a supporter of someone going through narcissistic abuse means to support the person close to you, to hear them, to don't try to find the magic wand to make it all go away or try to fix the situation or keep recommending psychics or mystics or love coaches or anything magical. Listen, if you know a good shrink that understands narcissistic abuse, then great, give them the referral. But stop giving books on love cures and love communication and finding love and fixing love. That ship has sailed. When a person has to manage a relationship with someone who has no empathy and is mean and manipulative, there is no book that's going to fix the relationship because it can't be fixed. Instead of fixing, if you want to be a supporter, try to focus on laughter, support, taking things off of their plate, whether that's through babysitting or grocery shopping, or suggest a trip or a weekend away with you and them as friends, or a spa day, or watch movies, or cry with them. And promise me that if you want to be a good supporter, you will never say the words, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" to them again, even if you do not agree with their decision, unless their decision puts them in physical danger, but obviously that's another conversation. It's hard to not fix a problem in front of you. It's hard to just be. Listen, as a therapist, I want to fix things all the time. It's tempting. But the work really is to help guide a person to find and organize the tools that they already have, to understand that they've already got a toolbox, teach them how to use it, empathize with a person, and respect them. That is how to be a supporter. If there's any other ideas I didn't think of, as always, please drop them in the comments, but promise me you won't try to fix it. Thanks again.